Good morning, everybody.
Welcome.
Great
Hey,
to
Dan.
see you all.
Cindy. Hi, Nora. Nice to see you guys.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Fred. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Great to see so many of you again. And as we always do, please put in the chat where you are, and not just like a location like I'm in my bedroom, but like actually where you are in the world. It would be great. You can also say which part of the house you're in. That's good.
Also, what instrument do you play? Because we've invited all of our IM community, so would love to see.
Yeah, and if you are joining us for the first time, congratulations, you've made it into the Invested Musician family. We don't require a COVID test. One of the few places that you can.
How many COVID tests have you taken in the last week right now?
Well, this week I'm going to take 5 COVID tests. Just because it's so much fun. And I have a lot of gigs this week, and every gig requires a different, time frame and a different COVID test. So I had my first, we were just talking before we came into the room, and I had my first COVID test where someone actually drove up to my house. They drove up to my house, jumped out of the car and stuck a thing in my nose and went back in the car and left. And that was my COVID test. So anyway.
Speaking of freelancing, then there you go.
Exactly. And for those of you who have a camera on their phone or their device, we love to see you. And even if you are not wearing your Sunday best, that's totally fine. It's great to see your face, to get your reactions to my hilarious jokes and wonderful stories. Of course, it's fine to leave your camera off, but it just looks really cool to see everyone. And then we get to see Tyler's background. That's awesome. He looks like he's just got lost on a farm. It's fantastic.
So just in case it is anyone's first Invested Musician event, as people are still joining in, I'll do a quick intro. So I'm Rupal. I'm one of the co-founders, along with Andrew, of course. We created this last May now, on your birthday, a year ago. Yeah, and my background is business and finance, and I'm certified tax specialist and all things money. So we kind of combined our expertise and, put together Invested Musician because we saw this great need for not only, developing musically, but also creating financial stability. So that is who we are and what we're about. And welcome, everyone. Nice to see you all.
Yeah, wonderful. And so this session, we wanted to talk about freelancing. What has become really clear in the last month or so, or a little bit longer, is that thank goodness the world is coming back, and gigs are coming back, orchestras are coming back. A lot of opportunities opening up across the summer and into the fall. So we thought it was a good time to sort of raise this point. And what we also realized is that we have a lot of really very smart people in the room, in this room, and so we're going to give you an opportunity today to start with one of the most important things of freelancing, which is building our network and building relationships. So shortly we're going to break into some smaller groups, and we're going to discuss. We've got a couple of questions for you guys to discuss and to think about, and to sort of pick each other's brains to find out, what are your thoughts on this, rather than listening to me talk for 45 minutes, which, as entertaining as that is, we can get some other value. So the first question that I have is for Sammy. Sammy and Dana are here as part of our amazing IM team. Good morning, guys. Sammy, do we have any questions that have popped into the chat, or that you've been sent, or should I get going?
No, go ahead. I think that's fine.
Okay. So the two questions that I want us to work on this morning and have a think about, and then then we'll come back and share a bit of this, and then I'm going to expand on that as we go. But the first question that I want you to think about are what are the top skills that you need to be a successful freelancer? So a lot of what we talk about in the IM community and that we talk about in the programs is developing a plan. And we need to start with a good sort of base before we jump into the plan. And I think most of us as freelancers, we sort of, sort of just start and things sort of evolve as we go, and we get better gigs, and that's terrific. But what would be really good, particularly given that we've got, things are going to open up and we've basically gone from totally closed to moving towards open, is if we can create a plan for, how we want to construct our freelancing situation rather than it just sort of fall upon us, we're going to be in good shape. So just have a think and maybe write some stuff down now. If you need a few seconds to grab a pen, but think about what are maybe the top 5 or so skills that you think are going to really help you to be successful as a freelancer. And remembering that there are a multitude of things that we have. So we've got the playing side of things. What are the skills that you need in a playing area? What are the skills in terms of actually when you're on the job? Like what do you need to be able to do within the section if you're playing in a section, or if you're a soloist, what do you need to do? And then what are the networking things? What are the relationship things that are going to really advantage you as you're going through this freelancing situation? An important point to remember is my day job is, other than invested musician, my day job is principal horn of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. I still consider myself a freelancer because that was how I started my career. I started my career at 20 as a freelancer, and I did about 4 or 5 years of freelancing in Adelaide and Sydney. And then I got my first job. And then it continues from there. I teach, I play outside concerts, I play chamber music concerts, I do solo repertoire, I play for other orchestras. All of these things are, by definition, freelance. So all of the skill set, even if you have a full-time orchestral job or a full-time teaching job, putting together a plan for your freelancing is still something that's going to be really helpful. So what are some of the ideas that, that come to mind for you as to what is going to give you a successful freelance career and get the sort of gigs that you're actually really, really wanting, and that are high quality and, hopefully well paid as well. That's important. And the other question, it's sort of expanding on that. The other question I want us to think about and have a chat about is, where do you see the opportunities for freelancing opening up? So, for me, there are 5 major areas of sort of freelance work as players. So we have the orchestral side. So, playing symphony orchestra, playing in a local regional orchestra. Maybe it's, getting a gig, as an extra, playing Alpine Symphony with the New York Philharmonic. Maybe it's, coming in, playing assistant in the Atlanta Symphony. Maybe it's just a throw together orchestra that is for a particular gig. Opera and ballet is another area that in the larger cities is certainly an area of employment, and definitely like there's touring ballets come through cities quite often, and so there's that's another area for us to seek employment. Then, of course, in most major cities, there's the Broadway musicals. There'll be a touring show that comes through, or there'll be a network of theaters. If you're in New York, there's quite a lot. This is definitely a significant area of employment. This was basically my freelance career when I was living in Sydney. Sydney normally has between 2 and 5 theatre musicals running at any particular time. And when I was in my early 20s, that was my area of work. I before I got my job in the Adelaide Symphony, I played for 10 months, 8 shows a week, Beauty and the Beast, the Disney production. Fantastic show, a lot of fun, and I was able to use that experience to continue to develop my playing, so that I could have a successful audition for a job. So Broadway musicals is definitely, in the larger cities, another area of work, and it can be extremely advantageous for you from a financial point of view and just a job stability point of view. So it's something to definitely think about. And then, of course, the one that I tend to get asked about more than anything else is the studio recording industry. That's obviously one that is very popular here in Los Angeles. And what is really fascinating is that most people sort of see, in terms of LA, they see, Star Wars and, the big blockbuster movies as that is the industry. That is a very small piece of the pie for freelancers in Los Angeles. I would say the majority of freelancers in LA are playing, that play in the studios, are doing television work. They're doing smaller recording sessions. They're doing sessions not at Sony or Fox or Warner Brothers, but in smaller studios. And it's hilarious. I actually walked past one. I live in South Pasadena, if anyone knows Los Angeles. We were walking up to the main street of South Pasadena, and I walked past a studio that I'd never even taken note of before. And it was just on a residential street. And it was obviously a commercial studio, a sound studio. So there are lots of little studios all over the city, and larger ones. And so it is a very viable form of income in the studio scene, even if you aren't one of the fortunate ones that ends up doing the Steven Spielberg movie or the latest Avengers in the series. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and we're going to talk a little bit later about how we can sort of build those connections and build a career in that industry. And then the fifth area is actually something that we have even more control over ourselves, is chamber music. We have the opportunity to create our own chamber music groups, and this actually dovetails really nicely into one of the core things that I think of when I think of freelancing, which is education and teaching. So as a freelancer, for me, the start of my freelance career actually it had nothing to do with playing the horn. It was all about teaching the horn. That gave me a financial base so that then I could have the opportunity to take the gigs that I wanted to, and start building connections with other teachers who were connected in the scene of gigs and playing. But the advantage of the teaching side of things from a freelance point of view is that not only is it the per hour rate very good relative to many other jobs, but it has the one really important thing that we need as a freelancer, which is flexibility. Because if the New York Philharmonic calls up at 8 in the morning and says, we need you to be at Lincoln Center at 10 o'clock for, to play in the section for Mahler 5, you want to say yes to that. That's a good thing to say yes to. And if you have a flexible income situation and a flexible working situation, then you're able to take advantage of those opportunities. And if it's set up that way that, everyone understands the flexibility side of it, then you're not going to annoy people, and you're going to be able to, have a good financial base and the flexibility to do the stuff that is important for you and go from there. So my ideal setup was, as a freelancer, was at the time, near the end of my time freelancing in Sydney, where I had about 20 hours a week of teaching, which was quite a lot, but it was a very good, stable financial base. And then I was working in a theatre musical that I had flexibility to be able to get out and play with the opera or play with the symphony as those opportunities came up. But the core fundamental of all of that was that I started with a teaching base of about 8 hours a week when I moved to Sydney. And that was enough to cover my rent, was enough to, you know, make it so that I wasn't desperately sort of having to either take every gig that came through the door, or that I wasn't having to work so many hours in a lower paid job so that I couldn't practice. So as a freelancer, and we want to start with what are your goals? What are your goals over the next 12 months? Where do you want to be? Where do you want your playing to be? And making sure that everything fits into that plan. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is it's not rocket science. What the danger of us when we do go into freelancing is that we get and I'm like this. Actually, this is unfortunately it's part of my personality. It's easy to become a bit of a hoarder, and you say yes to everything. And then what happens is you get so busy and so stuck in what you're doing that you lose the big picture. So you're racing from one gig to the next, you're exhausted and you're just saying yes to everything, but your playing suffers or it doesn't improve, and you lose the opportunity. You don't create enough space in your life and your mindset to be able to actually take on the information you need to be able to grow, to be able to actually move towards the better opportunities. So it's important to be able to take a little step back occasionally and have a look at, like, where do I want to be going? What sort of gigs do I want to be having in 12 months time? Because, and this is probably going to sound a bit weird, but the danger is in the next sort of 3 months or so, there's going to be a flood of gigs that come in. And the instinct's going to be, yes, 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 I'll take everything. And that's probably good, but making sure that, all of these gigs fit into the larger plan. And this is exactly the same thing that we've talked about in the past about, goal setting and in your practice planning, making sure that all of the short-term stuff fits into the longer term. And it's something we spend a lot of time. Dan Omer knows this. Morning, Dan. We spend a lot of time in the well, we will in the summer course, but we have in the previous courses. We spend a lot of time talking about, how to organize our plan, how to make sure that our plan is fitting the direction that we want to go. And so one of the things this morning I really would encourage everyone to do is just take a little bit of time to have a think about where you see yourself in 12 months. What sort of gigs do you want to be getting? What sort of setup do you want in your lifestyle? And then how can what's going to be happening in the next couple of months fit in that direction? And it's okay. I have a very good friend of mine, because he knows that I'm generally very busy. He's like, Andrew, you realize that if you create space for yourself, you create time and space and headspace, something better is going to come into that space. You don't have to fill every space in what you're doing. You want it to fit within the goals that you're setting. Okay, so Sammy is going to break us out into groups. We're going to do this for we're going to do this for about I'd say 15 minutes. 15 minutes. We can set this, and we're just going to break into groups of how many do we have in the rooms? Yeah, let's say groups of 5. I think it's thereabouts. Pretty good. I will pop around the rooms and stick my head in and say hi. But the 2 questions I'd love for you guys to discuss, now you've had a little bit of time to think about it and digest it. What are the skills that you're going to need to be successful as a freelancer? And where do you see the opportunities coming up in the next 6 to 12 months that you would be, that you would be liking to take advantage of? All right. So I will see you periodically, and then we'll meet back here in 15 minutes. Good luck. Welcome back, everybody. How are we going? Oh, we've got still a few? No? Yes? Okay. Are we all back, Sammy?
Yes,
Okay.
everybody is back.
Terrific. How was that, everyone? Great. I heard a lot of really fantastic ideas and thoughts, and we were covering a lot of really good stuff. So really, really helpful. Is there anyone? Oh, hi, Katini. It's okay. You can turn your you can turn your mic on. It's no problem. Was anyone have anything that they discovered that sort of was they hadn't thought about before? Or anyone who would like to sort of summarize what their group came up with? Don't be shy. Otherwise I'll just start pointing at people. No. Have your I-9 and 44 ready. Yeah, very, very good advice. And as Doug Hall would tell you, Doug was the former assistant personnel manager in San Diego and is still in the San Diego Symphony. Doug would tell you to make sure you have your backup information ready to go too. So the information, like your passport, photo of your passport or green card or, visas, all these things. The more of that information you have at hand ready to go to deliver to the contractor or to the personnel manager, you make their job easier. So as a freelancer, the easier that you make the person who's hiring you's job, easier it is for them, the more likely they are going to want to hire you again. The more difficult you make it, the harder it is for them to want to call you because they're like, well, I now have to do extra amount of work. And if I'm hiring 100 people for a show, that's extra a lot of hours. So if you can be the person that is the helpful one, make life easy for the person who's hiring you, that's going to be to your advantage. So this is the interesting thing about this little discussion is that what we learn with freelancing is that sometimes even more important than playing is just the organizational side and the personality side and the network side. It is such an important thing. And then of course it's great for us to play well. I heard in the groups, in every group that I went through, they talked about making sure we could sight read well. As a freelancer, this is something that's super important. You get called for the last minute to come in and read Alpine Symphony with the laphil. It's handy if you can sight read because otherwise, it makes life a bit tricky. Or if you have to come in and play, as one of my first gigs, I got a phone call from Phantom of the Opera at 7 o'clock on a Thursday night. Can you get your backside in here now? We need someone to play second horn. And it was like, okay, I guess I'm playing Phantom of the Opera tonight. And so, sight reading is very important, but this other side of it is equally important in making sure that you're an easy person to work with. Because the chances are, if you're in a major city, there are a lot of choices. And if that contractor knows, I can call, Andrew, and he's going to turn up on time. He's going to have the right, gear. He's going to, be prepared. He's going to be a nice person, and he's going to do a good job. And he's going to make my life easy. And he's reliable. Great, let's give him the gig. And they don't have to, make another phone call. What else have we got in the chat? Yeah, definitely in the studio scene, Russ touches on this, definitely in the studio scene, it is, I would say 95% of the gigs that you would do as a studio musician, you do not see the music before you get into the session. Very, very rare will you see music ahead of time. So the ability to, so the two things, get there early in case the music's, out and you can actually look through some stuff. Because the last thing you want to be doing is sight reading the latest Star Wars movie. Trust me, it's hard. So if you can have a little glimpse at it, half an hour before, so getting there early, that saves you also the stress of having to worry about it. But yeah, having those sight reading skills are really, really useful if you're wanting to be a studio musician, definitely. Yeah. All right, what else have we got here?
One question that came up a little bit earlier from Jacqueline Marshall was, what distinguishes your first call subs from your occasional calls, like with the laphil, for example?
Yeah, I mean, an orchestra like the laphil will have, and in most instruments this is the case, we'll have a list of players that pretty regularly will be called upon. Normally, before the personal manager will hire someone, they will go to the principal and say, okay, so who would you like to hire for this particular gig? And normally there's a group of regular people who would go through that. That's obviously going to be, if the principal's got any sort of smarts, they will work in conjunction with the section. They're not going to hire someone who the section doesn't want to work with. But there'll be obviously a discussion, and there'll be an order of people who they feel comfortable with. And from time to time, and definitely in a city like Los Angeles, where even yesterday I found out that all 3 major sound stages were working yesterday. So that means there are a lot of people who are playing the horn or the flute or the violin that are not available to play in the Philharmonic. We also had a concert yesterday, so and we had a rehearsal in the morning. So the regular, if we were to need extra players, the regular players probably wouldn't be available, and this happens quite often. So the idea of making sure that you're staying in contact with people in the section, if there's an orchestra that you want to particularly work with, playing for members of the section, playing for the principal from time to time, just to keep on the radar until you actually get into that regular rotation. Doug, you have an idea?
Yes. In our contract in San Diego, we had to get our list from the principal, but also from auditions. For quite a while, the finalists from national auditions would be moved to the top of the sub list. So anytime you can audition, it's very important that you do. And also substitute auditions. Depending on the need of the orchestra, there should be a lot of substitute auditions now coming out of COVID, because all the lists are going to change. So I encourage you to get audition ready. And then if you can, like Andrew said, play for the principal or anybody in the section that you're interested in. Say, I've got an audition list ready, and of course, play your best stuff.
Yeah, this is a really important point. Is if you are going to go into a lesson with a player in the section, and your idea is that you really want to get work in that section, that is not the time to bring repertoire that you're not familiar with, or that or expose your weaknesses. There are times to do that. Once you've built the relationship, once you've built the trust with the person that you're having lessons with, then bring them stuff that is, that you find challenging or that you want to work on. But if you're going in for like a show lesson, take the excerpts that you feel really comfortable with, that you feel confident about in the register that you feel confident about, and show your best, so that you're actually thinking of it more in terms of it being an audition rather than a lesson. You're going to get a lot of good stuff out of the lesson, for sure, but be thinking about what you want to present as much as possible. And this is definitely a way for you to show your best side and then potentially get hired. Doug.
Yes, the other thing is, if you play your best and you're a low horn player or a high horn player, and you get known for that thing. Also, the tubing. I got to do Alpine Symphony not too long ago, and there are a couple of unusual instruments. So as a personnel manager, you look at that instrumentation really quick, and they ended up hiring a bass oboe from New Jersey. So if you get known for a couple of different specialties, like Wagner tubing, that's a good thing on your list, so a personnel manager can hire you for those specialty things. Sometimes we have a heck of a time finding a banjo because most of them don't read music.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So there you go. So everyone should be practicing banjo, just so that you know. Very important. There's a story of a guy in LA, a LA freelancer, and there's a I think it was a gamelan. I'm not really sure what the name of the instrument is, but it's a percussion instrument that's played with like little hammers, and it's pitched. And John Adams wrote this incredibly difficult part for this instrument. And the LA Phil could not find anybody in the country that played this instrument. So this guy found one on eBay for like a couple $100 and was like, I'm going to learn how to play this instrument. He learned how to play that instrument, and he's played that piece, like he's like the guy that plays that piece anywhere in the world. And it's a big piece that John Adams wrote, and a lot of orchestras have taken it, and he's basically making, and he can charge whatever he wants because they can't hire anyone else. So he's created a career for himself out of a single instrument. It's really interesting. Doug.
Sorry. Yeah, we had, if you're fourth horn and you're doing organ bass or banjo is a good double because there are only 3 parts. So if you learn the banjo, you can get a 50% double.
There you go. The well-known fourth horn banjo double. Yeah, that's famous all around the world, that one. All right, Dana, you had some questions that came in as well.
Yes. So another question that kind of came up was from Sarah Tim. And like, how do you position yourself to stand out for job offerings that are able to happen right now as we're getting out of COVID?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, we talked about this with one of the groups that, sometimes it's a little difficult to think like, okay, so what's going to open up? Where do I go with all of these things? The answer is that there will be a lot of stuff that opens up, and a lot of this will happen sort of organically. Again, we talked about, making sure that you make connections with the section of your local orchestra that you want to be hired for. We also talked about, there was one question that came in about how do we make connections with contractors? And the simple answer to this is maybe not as sexy as we would hope. We don't really need to make contact with contractors, particularly if you haven't built a relationship with them. Most of the time, we're going to get a call from a contractor through another musician. So that musician will, the contractor will ask me, oh, Andrew, can you do this gig? Maybe. And I say, well, unfortunately not. They said, do you have anyone that you can recommend? And I say, yes, I would recommend, these people. And that's generally how, a lot of the trickle down will actually work. So in terms of actually building these connections, I think, start with the network that's close to you and build stronger relationships there. And then making sure that, if you need to make contact beyond that, so if you don't know, or you haven't met the local principal horn, or haven't met the local, section, you haven't met the local principal flute in your orchestra, then that's the easy way to expand that circle by calling them up for a lesson, or asking them if they can, you can play for them, or if you have met them before, maybe you can meet them for coffee and have a chat and just confirm that what your intentions are, that you've been working really hard, this is where you went to school, this is your education, this is your experience, and you're available and looking forward to playing when opportunities arise. So it's thinking of growing these things in an organic way is always going to be beneficial, remembering that yes, there's going to be an explosion of work that's going to come in, and we want to be prepared for that. But we are not going to jump from, where we are at the moment to being a regular sub in the Berlin Philharmonic over summer. That's not going to happen unless you've already had contact with the Berlin Philharmonic, right? So it's fine. We more opportunities means that there's going to be more trickle down, and that we can maybe increase that speed of us progressing, rather than, we don't need to think about trying to jump too far. that would be my sort of thought in this. So you know, trying to figure out and spending some time thinking about where are the contacts that you want to make within your current network and within your current circle, and then how can you strengthen those relationships, and how can you build on that, so that so that people know that you're available and that they know that that you're a good player. So the really important thing is that spend time over the summer getting your playing into really great shape and getting organized, getting things like making sure your website is organized, or making sure that you have a website so that you can direct people. Yeah, look, they say, so you play the horn, yeah? Oh yeah, I play the horn. Yeah, you go to, well, please don't go to andrewbainhorn.com, because go to investedmusician. Yeah, go to investedmusician, and you'll see what I do. Or you can refer them to some recordings on your website, or concerts that you've done. And this is another tool. So now is the time to get those elements really organized, and so that if people Google you, you're clear about. And this is something we talk about in the summer course. When someone Googles you, you want it to go to the right areas. There are ways that you can set these things up with SEOs and through your website, so that people are being directed where you want them to go. They're not just going to random places. Like if you Google Andrew Bain, you've got a chance of getting me, a Scottish dentist who's a singer, and a drummer, and then a guy who writes travel books, and a lawyer, I think. So we want to make sure, for me, if someone Googles me, they're going to get the right Andrew Bain. That would be ideal. So we can create all these things, and it's not that difficult. It's just, again, being organized and having a good plan, and then people will be able to find you and check you out. So that it's pretty clear, because this is, everyone's on the internet these days, so it's pretty easy. If you've got some really great recordings, make sure people can find them. Make sure that they hear your best work. Yeah. Dana, anything else?
Nope. I think that's...
One other question came from Tyler. Hi Tyler. Of how do you deal with payment issues when the other side is being a little bit difficult?
That's a really good one. Rupal, do you have any thoughts of that on the business side?
Let me have a look at it real quick. Why don't you go, and then I'll add.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always important to make sure that you get as much of the information in writing. As musicians, we generally do a lot of stuff word of mouth, and verbal agreement. Oh yeah, I'll do that gig for $100. Yeah, sure. Yep, no worries. And you turn up and they give you $50, and you're like, but hang on, didn't we agree on this? So getting stuff in writing, and it's as simple as you have a conversation with someone. You can send them a really quick email saying, oh, great to see you the other day. Fantastic. Really excited about the gig. Just confirming this is the day, this is the venue, this is the agreed fee. Then you can refer back to that later on and say, like, oh, you're only paying $50, but here, don't you remember we agreed to this amount? And that will normally, hopefully jog their memory. The other thing is always that, the union is a possibility for you to be able to go there and get support that way, particularly if it's a union gig. It should be pretty straightforward. But yeah, I would just make sure that I got as much stuff as I could, in writing, so that you have a reference for that. Ripple?
Yeah, and I was just gonna add that if you can get some market data around what a typical cost of that service would be, or what is the typical fee for a master class at that university or wherever you're doing your event, and knowing in advance what the industry rate is going to help you negotiate. And you will be surprised at how every time they offer a price, it may be different than what was previously, and it's sometimes different for all sorts of reasons, gender being one of them, unfortunately. So, continue to, and you can always ask and just simply say, is there any room, okay, that's a little bit lower than what I typically ask for. Is there any room here? Can we work on, is there some other way we can work together? And then if there's something, and then we get into negotiation, which is a whole other topic that we could dive into, but we won't go into too much more here. But those are some initial thoughts, at least, to help.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Oh,
Please.
I would also add that if you're having trouble getting paid the amount that was agreed upon, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? I once played an opera gig where they were planning to pay the orchestra out of the proceeds from ticket sales, and they didn't sell enough tickets to pay the orchestra. And so I was the squeaky wheel, and I got paid because I knew that, the loudest people were going to be paid first. And hopefully they worked it all out and got everyone paid eventually, but I would say don't be afraid to be the squeaky wheel.
Yeah, great thought. There are two quick ones I think I can get to. So that when reaching out to someone like the local principal to ask for a lesson, how forward or overt should you be about looking for work? I think generally if you're someone in my position, the work is the work. Like I'm not going to create any work, or there's going to be the same amount of work as there would be. We're not going to manipulate things to create more work. But your playing will speak for yourself. You're playing and just being an engaging, nice person to get along with. It'll be pretty clear that they're going to probably want to hire you if you play really well. If there's the opportunity. If there's not the opportunity, obviously no one's going to get hired. But I think with all of this, it's just important to be patient, be personable, be very respectful of the people that you're working with, and play as well as you can, and then good things will come into that space, I think. There was one other. Yeah, in terms of being introduced to contractors, again, if you're in a situation where you're in a gig that the contractor hired you, that's a really good time to go up to the contractor and make sure you introduce yourself, so that they can put that face to the name. That's going to be really helpful later on. They're going to, oh yeah, I remember Andrew. Yeah, he's that. I mean, in my case, it's easy because in this country, I have a point of difference that I have a really weird accent. So that I can, people are going to remember that. So it's important that I actually talk to them. So the first thing I say to everyone is, oh, g'day, how are you? Because no one else introduces themselves with the word g'day, because no one's ever heard of it. But then that makes it very clear, and that's something that they, hopefully will remember next time. So this has been a fantastic hour. We spend quite a bit of time in the summer program talking about freelancing, and it will be an important point of focus as we move through the summer. We have 2 days left for those of you who are interested in joining us in the summer. We love to work with you. We have several of our current and former members of the program in this meeting, and thanks, Daniel. And we would love to schedule time to have a chat. If you need to learn more about Invested Musician and the programs we offer, Sammy has put the link in the chat. But we're excited to do a lot of stuff on playing, on your organizational side, on your career development side, practice planning, which we talked about in one of the previous free sessions that we did. A lot of stuff to really get your playing elevated during the summer and your skill set, so that when all of these gigs come in, you're in the best position to take advantage of it. So thank you to Sammy and Dana, and Rupal has jumped off. Thank you to everyone for the hour. I hope you enjoyed the format. This was a lot of fun to see you guys working in small groups. That was really cool. Any questions, please reach out to us. And then over the summer, we'll be restarting the warm-up sessions, and we'll have some further free sessions as we go through the summer. But reach out to us if you'd like to join us for the summer program. We've got a few spots left, and it closes midnight on Saturday night is the closing for the program. Great. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.